Welcome to another edition of the It's Cavalier podcast. It's your boy Mack, and tonight our Cleveland Cavaliers took on the Indiana Pacers for the third time this season. Now, you guys may remember they lost the first two matchups this year in very frustrating fashion, and it seemed as if they could be heading towards yet another L after the first quarter, but slowly but surely they turned the momentum of this game around like we know that they are very capable of. It's something about this Cavs team, ladies and gentlemen. When the chips are down, when they do not have when the morale is low, when they do not have their best pieces, they figure out ways to win. They figure out ways to surprise people because a lot of people were looking at the fact that Donovan Mitchell was not going to be available for this game. They were looking at the fact that Evan Mobley is still out there, looking at the fact that Max Strus and Dean Wade, they're not there. They're looking at that and they're penciling this in as a loss. I had a lot of people telling me that this team was going to take that L tonight. Thankfully, that did not happen. But again, after it started to look like it could be going that way after that first quarter, they seized the momentum in the following quarters. They used a big second quarter followed by a monstrous 36-point third to take the lead heading into the fourth. Now, that's when things truly got interesting as Indiana clawed and scratched their way back into it. They fought to within two before tying the game at 103 all. And at that point, it just kind of seemed like this was destined to go the distance and head into overtime, where the Cavs have a 3-1 record this year. And down so many bodies, I'm not going to mince words here. I really did not want that to happen, Cavs fans. I really did not want this team to head to overtime because every additional minute these guys spend on the court and logging on their bodies is another opportunity for something bad to occur in regards to injuries. That's always a worry of mine with the way that this team has just been banged up this year. They've been dealing with so much injury adversity. It's got 2021-22 season vibes in regards to the injuries this year. So I wanted this game done in regulation, suffice to say. That said, the Cavaliers would walk away with the victory tonight, winning, if I'm not mistaken, again by the score of 108-103. Multiple performances throughout to talk about. Obviously, we're going to get to the Marcus Morris debut. That was phenomenal. It was a great signing. I'm glad that he's on board at the moment. But man, this is a fun game to watch from start to finish. Although that first quarter was a little bit frustrating. I was really happy that the Cavs were able to, after getting punched in that first quarter, were really able to respond. They responded really well after getting punched in the first quarter, punched in the mouth in that first quarter. I love the way that they were able to rebound in the second, third, and then ultimately the fourth quarter. Game wasn't without its frustrating points, but moreover, more often than not, guys stepped up, and guys stepped up in a big way. One of the players, honestly, that stands out above the rest for tonight is the one, the only Caris LeVert. You know him, you love him, the resident Sixth Man of the Year candidate that this Cavaliers team boasts. He would finish with 23 points, 8 rebounds, and another huge assist total on the season. 11 assists. Now, I posted a stat during the game over the Cavs' last 13 or so games, including tonight. LeVert, prior at the time of posting it, he had 97 assists through his last 13 games. That is now up to 100. Caris LeVert has dished out 100 assists over his last 13 games. That is insane. That is insane. That that's just crazy to me. And he's done a lot of that coming off of the bench. I got to double check, but he hasn't started more than 3 or 4 games this season, and it's been crazy. Including tonight's game, Caris LeVert has only started 4 games, and he's given the Cavs a very good collection, a very good assortment of stats. He's really filling up the stash, and he's really turned into that secondary playmaker that the Cavs can lean on, especially with Donovan Mitchell not at 100% on the night. And just the way that he was able to get these guys going and find guys and hit them in their spots and get other guys involved. And we know how great he is at that dump off pass and the drive and kick game. There's just been a lot of different areas this man has been able to impact the game. And the best part for me is in a game where Darius Garland is just a no-show in the first half. We'll talk about him in a little bit. He was an absolute no-show in that first half. Caris LeVert came up big time. And he put the team on his back, and he took the scoring responsibilities upon himself on his way to 23 points on a very efficient 7 of 15 from the floor. And he drew a ton of contact, finishing with 11 free throw attempts. You still got to knock him down. He did miss 3 freebies out there tonight. And the team as a whole, that still remains a problem. They were just 20 of 28 from the free throw line tonight. That's good for 71% free math buffs out there. But man, Caris LeVert was an absolute just godsend tonight. And I see Noah Herro just down here just to get to the comment section already. Not even trying to hate, but Garland was more of a no-show the entire game. I mean, I guess you could say that from an offensive standpoint, but you got to give him his due, because let's call a spade here, right? This was not a game that DG is going to want to look to and say, hey, you know what? This is why I'm being paid $190+ million. But at the same time, let's know and understand that he had 2 points. He had 2 points, and I think 1 rebound, 1 assist at halftime. He put on a second half in which he scored 11 points, grabbed 5 rebounds, and I believe he dished out 6 assists. So he had a much, much better second half, especially earlier on in that fourth quarter and late down the stretches of the third, if I'm not mistaken. So he did turn things around. He had a much, much better second half. The shot just wasn't there tonight. He was 5 of 18 from the floor and just 1 of 9 from 3-point distance. But there are far too many sequences tonight where he would end up just over dribbling. And I've seen that be a constant complaint. Thanks, tune in. 6 rebounds, 7 assists in the second half. So he really, really did find ways to impact the game in other ways. And that's what you want from one of your star players when their shot is not falling. So he definitely was trying to add in other areas. With Donovan Mitchell not out there, he is the focal point of the defense's attention, right? He's getting all that defensive attention. And the Pacers are not a known defensive team. They will let you put up points on them. So it was a little disheartening to see DG just not be able to get to a spot and get shit off. But 1 of 9 from 3-point distance, 5 of 18 from the floor overall. That's not exactly what you want to see out of your franchise point guard. But I'll let it slide because the Cavs won tonight, and he did find other ways to contribute. Though I got to say, he was nearly single-handedly trying to give the game back to him down the stretches in that fourth quarter. It's just, I don't know what it is, but late game execution, and it's not just DG, it's the team as a whole, but more so it's going to fall on DG more often than not, because DG is the primary ball handler, and he has been turning the ball over a lot more than you would like him to see in those late game situations. So late game execution continues to be an issue for him. But overall on the night, I'm not going to lay into him too much, because although he had that just no show of the first half, he did turn things around big time in that second half. So kudos to him for being able to do that, but not a game that I really want to talk about from him in particular. It just wasn't a worthwhile showing from him. But man, Caris LeVert was phenomenal tonight. Jarrett Allen had a big time second half. He would have finished with 23 points, 9 rebounds on 8 of 12 from the floor. And Caris LeVert and DG were really, really huge in getting him involved tonight. Really just everybody from top to bottom, man. Sam Merrill, another night in which his 3-point stroke just scares defenses. He would finish with 11. Isaac Okoro, another decent offensive showing on his way to 4-7 from the field. And then, of course, the final player in that starting lineup, George Niang, wasn't the best defensive game from him. 13 points, 2 rebounds, 5 of 8 from the floor, 3 of 4 from 3-point distance. He had a key defensive play late in that fourth quarter, which you absolutely love to see. But I know what you guys are here for. The one, the only Marcus Morris Sr. His debut for the Cleveland Cavaliers could not have gone any fucking better. Just a wonderful signing by Kobe Altman and the rest of this front office on a 10-day contract, mind you. So they got to figure out how to get the deal done, right? So just Kobe, skip the second day, the second 10-day contract and sign him to a rest of season deal. And now I get this. Somebody had asked me on social media prior to tonight's game, why do you think they gave him the 10-day as opposed to a rest of season deal? And I said, evaluation, right? Evaluation is one of those things where the Cavaliers, they're clearly a team that likes to use the time allotted to them to evaluate specific players. They did that this season with Craig Porter Jr. prior to signing it or converting his deal from a two-way contract to a standard deal. And I think the same line of thought was here with Marcus Morris, is to see what he has left in the tank, right? See what he can offer, see how he fits. Clearly he fits. Clearly he has a shot in the arm that this Cavaliers team needs out of that wing, power forward position, whatever you want to call it, because he's capable of suiting up and lining up in multiple areas. I absolutely feel I'm at a loss here, guys. I'm at a loss because Dean Wade is my boy. Y'all know, if y'all been rocking with me for a long time, you know this is the preeminent Dean Wade podcast. That's a running joke that me and Corey used to have when we first kicked this thing off. But Dean Wade has had a really good season. This has been a resurgent season for the likes of Dean Wade. George Niang, we know why he was brought in, right? The idea was that, hey, you need to pair the likes of Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley with a floor spacing presence out there at that power forward position. And coming up in free agency, George Niang was available. He was coming off of 5 straight seasons of shooting 40% or better from three-point distance. He had playoff experience. He was a bigger body guy out there, at least in weight. And our, body it doesn't have the typical basketball body in the general sense, but he did the things that Cleveland needed, right? And that's space the floor. And so when he was brought in, I'm like, hell, that makes a lot of sense. And he has started to turn things on as of late. Over his last 5 games, he's putting up a pretty good amount of points over George Niang, including tonight's game. Over his last 5 games, he's been putting up 14.2 points, 3.8 rebounds. He's shooting 53.1% from the floor, and he is actually shooting very well from three-point distance, 42.9% from three-point distance. The thing about Niang is that he is just not a noted defender, right? Dean Wade and Marcus Morris Sr. now are absolutely far and away better defenders than the likes of George Niang. And the reason I say all this, the reason I bring all this up is I'm at a loss here because I want everybody to see the court. I want everybody to play, right? Obviously, they still have to get the contractual stuff taken care of. You have to go ahead and, based off of tonight's game alone, I'm not wasting any fucking time, and I'm signing Marcus Morris Sr. to the rest of the season. The Cavs have gone through too many injury issues to not have him available and to let him walk out the door. And you best believe, based off his performance tonight, if the Cavs let him walk after that 10 days, somebody will pick him up. So do not take that chance, Kobe. Go ahead and sign Morris for the rest of the season. But again, I say all this to say is because I want all of these guys to play. They all deserve minutes, but I know it's probably only going to be 2 of them. Hell, I don't know. At full strength, I don't know who plays. Thanks, tune in. Says Cavs are 1-0 when Morris is in the rotation. That is 100% correct. That is irrefutable or not refutable. I don't know. But I don't know, man. Dean Wade, George Niang, Marcus Morris Sr. Who do you play? Obviously, they're going to have based off of tonight's game, you're going to have your subset of people who believe cut Niang out and Wade and Moore should be in the rotation purely based upon their combination of defense and shooting. And you wouldn't be wrong, in a sense, but at the same time, we know that 1-game sample sizes are not something you're supposed to go off of. And I'm trying not to overreact too much to what I've seen from Morris tonight, but he looks like he fits. He fits the bill of exactly what this Cavaliers team needs. He brings a toughness to the game that the Cavaliers just don't have enough of. Niang actually does that too, but Morris is more physical. Morris is capable of more. And from a defensive aspect, I feel like you would trust Morris a little bit more than you would the likes of a George Niang at this point in career. So I don't know. I'm at a loss here. I want all 3 of these guys to play. I'm just not sure what JB is going to do. Now, obviously, with Max out, with Donovan out, with Evan still out, with Wade out, Morris is going to play, right? More often than not. Niang is still going to occupy his positions in that starting lineup because he's been actually doing pretty solidly in these last couple of starts. But when the team starts to return to full strength heading down the stretch, I don't know, especially heading into the playoffs. I do not know what the rotation is going to look like because you obviously, if Evan comes back, as we assume he will, as Donovan comes back, and then I don't know what's going on with Max Strus. But assuming full strength, you have your starting five of DG, Donovan, Max, Evan, Allen, and then your sixth man is obviously Caris LeVert. You know you're going to give Isaac Okoro his fair share of minutes. He's going to get 20 plus a night. He deserves it. He's been phenomenal this season. The growth from him has been great. And then that eighth and ninth spot in that playoff rotation, I just don't know, man. Like it's going to come down to a couple of guys competing for minutes. And this is without even mentioning Sam Merrill, right? Who's been a flamethrower this season. And these are all good problems to have, obviously, for JB. But you are now in a situation where if you're going to shorten your playoff rotation and you're playing, let's say nine. I hate eight. I do not. I don't want to fucking see an 8-man rotation in the playoffs. I hate it. It's definitely the traditional playoff rotation format that most teams seem to go with is an 8 to 9-man rotation. But I hate 8. I just don't like that number because this team is too deep. It's too balanced. So I'm going to say 9. In that eighth and ninth spot, you legitimately have like 3 to 4 different players who warrant minutes, right? You got Wade, obviously, who's had a rebound of a season, probably the best season of his career. You have the newly signed Morris, who looks like a perfect fit on that bench, and you have Sam Merrill, right? You have Sam Merrill, who's the resident flamethrower and a guy that can get hot at the drop of a hat. And this is not even factoring in like more traditionally sized matchups. Like if the Cavs face the New York Knicks, you have Tristan Thompson who could possibly see some minutes, who just returned. Damian Jones has been okay, right? In the absence of Tristan, especially in those last couple of games, Damian stepped up. And so you really have a glut of guys on that in the reserves in that second unit who warrant minutes that likely won't get them. So I'm at a loss here. Prior to the acquisition of Morris, I kind of knew what I wanted in that playoff rotation, but I just don't know, man. I just don't know what direction that I would like to head in with the playoff rotation. And this is assuming that the team returns to full strength, right? We're assuming that we get Dean and Wade and Mobley and Donovan back at 100%, but I don't know. Good problems to have. But there's just so much to figure out. But just purely in reference to tonight's game, man, it was really good to see this team step up because more often than not, it's become clear to me that this team, again, they seem to rise to the occasion when you least expect them to. Morale seemed to be at an all-time low after the news for Donovan Mitchell came out. That being him missing some time due to the one just not being right, self-diagnosed, right, not being able to blow by guys. I think that is exactly the wording that he used in his own words. He said that he did not he did not feel like he was his usual self, basically, because he wasn't able to blow by guys. And you could see that, like he looks a little bit diminished out there. And after he had that PRP injection and came back, he just doesn't look right. He doesn't look like himself. And then the game that he comes back, he gets a nasal fracture. Tristan Thompson inadvertently gives him a nasal fracture. So there's just a lot going on. And I feel bad for the guy because he just recently missed out on being named to the All-NBA. An All-NBA nomination. He has missed out on that because he is not going to finish with the required 65 games. And thankfully, money does not factor into the equation with that because he's not eligible for the Supermax anyway, if I'm not mistaken, since he was traded to Cleveland from Utah. But you would have liked to see him get that nomination just because he's put in so much work this year. And he was a catalyst in Cleveland overcoming so much early season injury adversity with the likes of Evan and Darius Garland missing time. And so it sucks that that has occurred, but it has really given opportunities to guys who more often than not probably would not have gotten them prior to some of these injuries, right? But man, I I, uh, I just love the fact that they were able to respond in such resounding fashion tonight, and I'm glad that I don't have to sit up here and talk about Morris's stellar debut in a Cavs loss because that would have crushed me. Seeing him go out there and drill 4 or 5 3-point attempts and provide some pretty good defense, pretty solid defense and rebounding out there off the bench. I felt like I felt as if he was going to be able to have a good debut, but I did not necessarily know if it was going to end up being a victory heading into tonight's game because we did not have Donovan, we didn't have these other guys. And so for me, I'm glad, man. Like I said, Kobe, get this man signed to the rest of the season. You need him heading into the playoffs. And even if he's not initially in the rotation, that's a good option to have coming off the bench if George Niang or Dean Wade or Max Strus or one of these other options is really struggling and you need to give those minutes to somebody else, or you just need to change the pace, right? I absolutely love the fact that he was able to come in and have an immediate impact. Just phenomenal, man. So I'm glad that that was the case tonight. And he wasn't the only bright spot, obviously, with Caris and Jarrett Allen having pretty big games. But man, he was the star of the show tonight, in my opinion, outside of Caris. Tune In Sports says, just keep Spida healthy for the playoffs. Need him at full strength. I think that's what we all want, right? And I got a question for you guys. Feel free to answer in the comments. Um, if Spida had to miss the rest of the season in order to be healthy for the playoffs, or at least the next, let's say 5 to 6 games, do you think the Cavs could survive that? That's my question. Let me know in the comments. But I don't know. I think this team is deep enough, and I'm trying to trying to balance the idea of him taking time off and getting himself right for the playoffs, and the Cavs not sliding down the standings in the East. Because as you look at things right now, the East, man, it's tight. Nobody's going to catch Boston, obviously at 53 wins, but Milwaukee and that 2 seed, it's right there. And I very much would still like the Cavs to compete for that top 2 seed right there. And then you have New York, who is right on the Cavs' ass at 40 wins. You got Orlando at 40 wins. And that's really what you're thinking about right there, right? Because Cleveland at now 43 and 25, they have far of enough lead over the likes of Miami and Philly and now Indiana, who are like in the 37-38 win range, to stave them off, right? To help stave them off during this final stretch of the season. But I don't know. Because you see what happened to Darius Garland tonight. You saw how he was kind of a no-show, and you're not always going to get this version from Caris. So I don't know, man. I'm playing around with the idea in my head, and I would hope that Cleveland will be able to keep the pace without Donovan for an extended period of time, because there are guys here that deserve minutes who haven't gotten them, consistently this year. Especially when you're talking about Craig Porter Jr., who honestly, he did not have the best minutes out there tonight. And for everybody out there who's a Craig Porter Jr. fan, including myself, he did not have the best minutes. And that's part of the reason why he only played 7 tonight. He was a -4 from the field, missed all 3 of his shots. And the thing with me is that the playoff rotation, even if Donovan has to miss some time heading into that, it's largely set in stone with a little bit of movement being there around that 8th to 9th man. Because the starting 5, assuming full strength, they're all going to play. Caris and Isaac are going to get their minutes. And then it's a toss-up after that between Wade, Morris, Niang, Sam, and the list goes on. Just speaks to the level of depth that this team has that they did not have last year. Relax Sensation says, need Tristan's toughness. Absolutely. You need Morris's toughness now too, apparently. So add him to the list of tough guys on the roster. And I do believe that in specific matchups, having Tristan Thompson out there for specific stretches of time will help. Just imagine having a healthy Tristan Thompson or a non-roided out Tristan Thompson in last season's postseason series against the New York Knicks. I felt like his presence would have added a whole new aspect to the rotation, and it definitely would have helped in a matchup like that. And I continue to believe that this season, if they have to face New York again or some of these more physical teams out here. But he is not an everyday rotation player himself, and he certainly will not be in the playoff rotation to begin the playoffs. So we'll have to see. I don't know. These are all good problems for JB to have, by the way, though. So just keep that in mind. That's really all I can say. I mean, looking ahead at the Cavaliers schedule here, still got some tough ones coming up, right? You have Miami on Wednesday, and we know traditionally Miami has played Cleveland very, very well. They're a very, very good coached team. Anytime you have Eric Spoelstra on that sideline opposite you, you're probably going to be in for a long game. Then you have another matchup with the Minnesota Timberwolves before having to take on Miami again following that. And then that's when things start to ease up a little bit for just a small stretch, right? You got Charlotte in back-to-back games. And again, no team in the NBA is a complete throwaway. There are no easy wins in the NBA these days. Teams are still competitive even when they're not, right? And so this just goes to say, if the Cavs can just coast through, right, and just get through this stretch of Miami, Minnesota, Miami, there is a little bit of light on the other side, and that could buy Donovan, that could buy Dean, that could buy Evan, Max, and the list goes on. That could buy them the time that they need to get healthy, and that, I think, is what we all want right now, right? We want guys to be able to come back and not feel like they're pressed into action, because that's the last thing you want heading into the playoffs, is guys just forcing themselves to be out there, especially with the beatings that their bodies have taken. And for anybody out there that believes JB has overplayed some of these stars, specifically Donovan Mitchell, I just ask you to ask yourself this, like, go take a look at the actual minutes per game played by Donovan Mitchell and company, and you'll understand that JB is not necessarily riding these guys into the ground. I think I saw something today that stated that Donovan was 16th in minutes played per game this season, which is not an insanely high mark when you're looking at the grand scheme of things. Because if prior to tonight's game, the total minutes leaders in the NBA this season were DeMar DeRozan and Kobe White. Those two far and away lead the NBA in minutes over there in Chicago. If you don't believe me, just take a look. DeMar, 2,487 minutes. Kobe White, 2,424 minutes. They lead the pack in that category. The Cleveland Cavaliers, let's take a look here, shall we? You have Donovan Mitchell, who has played the 94th most total minutes this season. 94th, 1,732 minutes. And the per game average is obviously going to look a little bit different because Donovan, he's missed time this season. But even players who haven't missed a ton of time, like Okoro and Jarrett Allen and Max Strus, 1,994 minutes. As it stands, Jarrett Allen is Cleveland's leader in total minutes this season at 1,994 through 64 games now on this season, I believe. So, yeah, I mean, I say all that to say is that JB, he has this reputation for being notoriously short with his rotations. And while that isn't necessarily inaccurate, it's not necessarily that he has ridden his stars into the ground, though. It's because as I look here now, Donovan has played 35.4 minutes per game, which ranks 16th in the NBA. There are 15 players ahead of Donovan Mitchell in that category. And so I know you got to cut him a little bit of slack in that regard. Good to see you guys down there. I see Dr. Claw 77 couldn't have a better debut for Marcus Morris tonight. I mean, I loved it, Dr. Claw. I honestly felt that he was going to have a solid debut, and it would have killed me for this team to have put up an L in his debut. But I was not prepared for him to do what he did tonight. What was he? 5 of 7 from the field, including 4 or 5 from 3-point distance. Absolutely loved it. He showed a little bit of everything. The mid-range jumper is there. He can knock down that three ball, whether it's covered or uncovered. He can rebound. He can play defense in ways that George Niang can't. And he can realistically probably give you minutes at both small forward and power forward, right? He's not somebody who you're going to look to be to be an immediate source of offense, but as an off-ball option, man, it's a wonderful thing to have. He gives you size, he gives you toughness, just a lot to love, right? Just a lot to love about Morris. And just to give you guys a little more insight, this season with Philadelphia, obviously this is not going to factor in tonight's minutes with the Cavaliers because I'm not sure where positionally all of his minutes came from tonight, but he played 69% of his minutes at power forward this season for Philly, 17% of his minutes at small forward, and then he actually played 14% of his minutes at center. So he's a pretty versatile guy. And I have no doubt in my mind that JB is probably going to try and figure out how to get the likes of Wade, Niang, and Morris all time, right? And one of the great things that you know about versatility is that you can find multiple lineups to have guys available, right? Like we talk about this constantly with the likes of Caris LeVert, who can line up basically 1 through 3 and sometimes even at the 4 in small ball lineups. And so you can probably look to see Morris playing anywhere between 2 to 3 different positions if you need him to. And then that's awesome, right? Claw also says Tristan drawing fouls just by moving to the right spot to rebound, something he needs to instill in this team. I think that's one of those things, though, Claw, that you either have or you haven't. Like you can try and teach positioning, you can try and teach having a feel for where the ball is going to careen off the rim. But sometimes guys just are preternatural. They have a preternatural sense at that, right? We've seen guys be that way in the past, and Tristan, obviously, in his heyday, was one of those guys, especially on the offensive glass. Like they just have like this preternatural feel for where the ball is going to bounce off the rim, and you absolutely loved it. Jay Quest says, I was hyped for the signing and Morris overachieved tonight. Great to see him get some game time right away. Yeah, I mean the absence of Dean Wade really cleared that up, right? Because Wade and Niang are his biggest competitors for minutes. And so I wasn't quite sure what to expect tonight. I did feel like he was going to have a good debut, but I was prepared for him to do what he did tonight. I mean, just look at his season averages: 6.7 points, 2.9 rebounds, shooting 43.9% from the floor, including 40% from 3-point distance. Now, when I put out the reaction video about his signing, I noted that his addition was great because he adds toughness. He adds the ability to space the floor at the forward position, but it came on low volume, right? When you're looking at his 3-point attempts per game, it's not exactly a high amount. He's only taking this season with Philly. He only took 2.4 threes per game. So that 40%, I'm like, how much is that is real, right? Because on his career, he's not a bad 3-point shooter. Career-wise, he's 37.7% from 3-point distance. So you know that you can trust him in that regard to this Cavaliers team. And that's why I felt like giving him that two-way contract made a lot of sense, right? For me, it made a lot of sense why you would give him that two-way because you just wanted to evaluate the way that he looked beside the rest of these guys. But as TuneIn says down here, we have options for stretch fours. Something we did not have last year. This a complete 180 pivot from having a broken down version of Kevin Love due to that thumb injury last year. You had Lamar Stevens, right, who was giving you some minutes at the power forward position, and then that's really it. I mean, right? I mean, you had Jetty playing power forward at some points, but you just did not have these options last year. And obviously Dean Wade, right? I can't forget him. He was there, but he wasn't. If that makes any sense. He just was not himself last year. He is fully healthy this year. So yeah, I mean, this year you have like at least 3 different guys that you can count on in Morris, Wade, and Niang to reliably space the floor. And so just a complete 180 shift for JB. And this has now become a situation to which JB has to quickly figure out on the fly what is going to work best come the postseason and how to get the most out of certain lineups. We'll see. We will see. Svenrik Gaming says, man, let's talk about Ty Jerome having an ankle sprain for the entire season. That's just ungodly bad luck for Ty. And this is like when that signing took place, guys, I was actually pretty high on it. I was really excited to see what Ty could bring to the table because we all remember the game that he torched Cleveland last year, right? Does anybody else remember that? It was phenomenal. He brought shot making to the table. And, I honestly felt like he had an opportunity in front of him to be a solid backup point guard for this team heading into the season. And then boom, ankle sprain, and he's out for the rest of the season, basically. Just sucks, right? And then obviously you had the Ricky Rubio of it all, where you're like, man, is Rubio going to play? Is he going to retire? What's going on? But I honestly felt like Ty Jerome was going to step into that void, and it did not happen. So I do feel bad for the guy, and I think his opportunity with the Cavs is gone, right? I can't remember what his deal was. I think he was only signed to a 1-year deal, but I'm going to check. I think that is basically going to be his whole opportunity with the Cavs. No, he signed a 2-year deal. He signed a 2-year deal with Cleveland that included a $5 million guaranteed salary and annual salary of $2.5 million, right? And so he will be here next season, but he probably won't play, right? Because we know Craig Porter Jr. is waiting in the wings, and you still have Caris LeVert, you have Darius Garland, you have Donovan Mitchell. There's just no room. There's no room. So you're probably going to look at trading him, right? That'll probably end up happening either in the offseason or sometime early next year. That's just my opinion. I'm not sure what could happen, but that's kind of where I'm at on that. And that sucks ass for him because that is a guy who I honestly felt probably could have helped the Cavs because he had size, he had the ability to play make. He could shoot the ball, especially as an off-ball shooter. Just a weird thing for him, as Jay Quest says down here. I don't know, man. That's about all I can say about Ty Jerome, but I feel like I've kept you guys on here long enough. So I'm going to go ahead and hop off here. I will actually probably be dropping 2 episodes tonight. I had a snafu if you guys didn't catch it. Had Jackson Frank of Basketball Insiders on the pod earlier today. We recorded, so I'll probably drop that at the same time as I drop this episode. But just a good performance tonight. Definitely boosted the morale because morale just kind of seemed to be at an all-time low for the fan base. And hopefully they can carry this same type of energy into this game against Miami because Lord knows we're going to need it, y'all. I will close on this final comment from Svenrik Gaming, who says, also, Morris is the Flacco for the Cavs. I love that. Flacco is an old-ass man, right? I think a lot of people felt that that Flacco was going to return to Cleveland. And then I think we heard that the Browns didn't even offer him a contract, which is crazy to me. But I mean, it is what it is. I know they got another backup there, which they're pretty excited about. But I'm going to go ahead and head out of here. As I always tell you guys, if you'd like to reach out to me, you know how you can. It's Cavalier_pod on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and more. If you'd like to be added to this Cavalier Discord chat, you know what to do. Leave a rating, leave a review, send a screenshot of said review to itscavalier53@gmail.com, and I will send you an invite. Those of you who are listening, if you're not a first-time listener, you do not have an excuse. If you haven't posted a rating, if you haven't reviewed in some form or fashion, please go ahead and do so. You've been listening for a while now. I mean, I know there's some of you out there who've probably not done that, but please go ahead and do that. That helps out more than you know. It really does. And as I always say, thank you for sitting down with me and just reacting and chatting. I love speaking with you guys. Jay Quest says, thanks, dude. As always, definitely this win for my mental health. Love it, man. I love it. Jay Quest, if you only watch it on YouTube, don't worry about it. Appreciate it. If not, if you listen or you're subscribed to the podcast on Apple Podcast or Spotify, one of those 2 mediums, or wherever really that you listen to the podcast at, there should be an option to leave a rating or type some type of review. It's like that. But again, thanks for sitting down and chatting with me. You guys have a good night. Go Cavs, and hopefully we can carry the same energy into the game against Miami. Take it easy.